Welcome everybody to this morning's Governance and Transparency Committee meeting. Just noting that councillors in attendance, that's all the committee members here. We'll start with our acknowledgement of country. Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners on the land upon which we meet and their elders past, present and emerging. Do any councillors this morning have a declaration of interest? There being no declarations of interest or business outstanding, I'll move on to the confirmation of minutes. I'll seek a mover from the floor for those. Moved by Councillor Doyle and seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion on those minutes this morning? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 2 today is the acquisition of drainage easement for 13 Parcel Street, Brassel. It's a three-part recommendations. Are there any questions for the relevant officer this morning on this item? Councillor Milligan, well, Deputy Mayor Milligan, sorry. You got some questions for Property Services? Thank you.
Yes, I do, Chair. They pertain to just the actual design, so whichever officer would be best to answer those questions.
So you potentially think it's an infrastructure services rather than... Okay.
Would you like to pose your question and we'll...
Thank you, CEO.
Yeah, solid idea.
So, Chair, my question is with regards to the actual flow path and where the water that is the overland flow that is coming onto the property, where it is emanating from, and specifically which of those sub-properties were being impacted and which ones will it ameliorate that impact?
Okay. Bianca Gaudry, Senior Property Officer. I think we're probably better off asking someone within the design team that question.
Thank you. If I could, through the chair, I've had advice that we'll take that one on notice, please.
Yeah, Councillor Milligan, are you fine if we get that circulated amongst councillors prior to the council meeting?
Absolutely, Chair.
The relevant officer may not be here for that technical question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you. That being the case, I'll seek a mover for recommendations A through C from the floor. Is there a mover there? Moved by Councillor Doyle, seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion this morning? There being no discussion, we'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 3 today is the proposed acquisition of land for the intersection upgrade at Ripley Road and Reef Street, Flinders View. Four-part recommendation. Are there any questions for the officers on this item? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for recommendation A through D. Moved by Mayor Harding and seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any discussion?
If I may, Chair, obviously I know you spend a lot of time with residency, but obviously this is an intersection that residents are hanging out for to get done, so it's an essential part of making sure that that intersection at Reef Street proceeds.
Yep.
And I know that yourself and Councillor have spent a fair bit of time with residents out there, so thank you very much for your advocacy as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I certainly concur. This is just an acquisition that needs to occur before we get stuck into building it. The plan at this stage is still for that to happen over the remainder of this financial year and next financial year, and be pretty good. That new sweep lane onto the highway is going to be excellent. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 4 today is the disposal of sewage easements to urban utilities for Raceview Sewer Upgrade Project. A two-part recommendation. Are there any questions for officers on this item? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for recommendation A and B. Moved by Councillor Milligan and seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any discussion this morning? There being no discussion, I'll take it to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 5 today is the procurement matter, but I believe we require deferring this until after the caretaker period ends. The advice I've got here is it's best to refer it for consideration at a future Governance and Transparency Committee. I just wanted to confirm there is a way to deal with it if the future council changes committee structure isn't there. It would still end up somewhere, wouldn't it? Yeah, so just as long as that's the case.
Thank you, Chair. We'd make sure of that procedurally if there was changes to the committee structure. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, just as long as we're aware of it in case it doesn't get lost. So I'm happy to move that item 5, procurement, single source, purchase of artwork for Ipswich Art Gallery be referred for consideration at a future Governance and Transparency Committee meeting. That's procedural motion. Do I need a seconder for that one? Don't believe so. Any discussion from the committee on that? Proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 6 today is the revised meeting conduct policy. Just the one recommendation. Are there any questions of the relevant officer? Mayor Harding? Could you indicate whom?
I think probably Mr Wilson or the CEO would be just asking about the policy.
I think Mr Wilson is meeting room adjacent somewhere, but I'll leave it to the CEO to decide that.
Please, happy to take the question. Yeah. Yeah.
He's come in.
Good morning, councillors. Wade Wilson, Manager, Executive Services.
Mr Wilson, I know that it's, and through the chair, it's caretaker and we're changing a policy. Do you mind outlining why that's happening and how that's happening?
Certainly. Late last year, I think it was in late November, the state government made some legislative changes involving councillor conduct and a raft of other minor amendments to the Local Government Act. Part of those amendments also aligned with the model meeting procedures that are provided by the state government. And the revised model meeting procedures provided by the state were given to council late last month, if I recall correctly. So while the provisions are in the legislation that council must abide by or must not act in a way inconsistent with those model meeting procedures, in effect we have adopted those model meeting procedures that are provided by the state. So while there's no absolute requirement for us to update this policy, we felt it was best that we had a public view that was consistent with the model, so all parties were aware and on the same page. So it's best to, in our view anyway, to update this as soon as possible.
Right. And is that allowed under the caretaker provisions?
Absolutely. This isn't seen to be a major policy decision, nor is it actually a real change. The best way I would describe it is it's a mandatory administrative update.
Thank you. Mr Wilson, what impact will these changes have on how we operate here at Ipswich City Council?
The main provisions here, there's some minor amendments to declaration of conflicts of interest when a meeting can be closed to the public, and for the councillor conduct matters when they're referred back to council. The state has made a number of amendments and clarified how conflicts should be declared in those matters and how investigations are handled in a meeting of council, etc.
Thank you, Mr Wilson. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr Wilson this morning? Thank you. That being the case, I'll move on to looking for a mover from the floor. Moved by Mayor Harding and seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion on that item today? There being no discussion, I'll move to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 7 today is a working with children policy. So it's a report concerning the 4-year review, which is standard for council policies. Are there any questions this morning on this item? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for the one recommendation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Milligan, seconded by Councillor Kunzman. Any discussion this morning from the floor? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 8 today is our quarterly report to the Department of Housing, Local Government Planning and Public Works. Are there any questions of the relevant officer on this item? There being no question, I'll seek a mover for the one recommendation. It's moved by Councillor Doyle and seconded by Deputy Mayor Milligan. Any discussion this morning on this item? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 9 today is a concession for general rates for 2 Joffrey Street, Baval. Any questions on this item today? I'll seek a mover for the one recommendation. It's moved by Mayor Harding and seconded by Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion on this item?
If
Thank you, Mayor.
I may, Chair?
Yep.
I think it's important to note that this council very much supports the many charities and not-for-profits in our community. So this one's for Ozcare, which is a registered charity. And by doing this, obviously, we're doing 100% concession of their differential general rates. So we do this for many, many charities and not-for-profits in our community, and I'll be supporting these particular recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. Item 10 today is the monthly financial performance report for December of 2023. Are there any questions this morning on this item? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for the sole recommendation. Moved by Mayor Harding and seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any discussion? There being no discussion, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. I've got no notices of motion or matters arising today. I'd propose that the next committee meeting commence at 10:40 a.m. Is everyone comfortable with that? So as a result of that, I'll declare the meeting closed at 10:29 a.m. Thank you, everyone.